Hello, my name is Charles L. Perkins, and I'm here representing the McLennan County Historical Commission. And I am the church historian, and I have an important discovery that I'd like to present to you today. And this discovery involves the first settlements of African American in McLennan County and the Waco area. The Black Freedom Colonies of McLennan County and Waco are the names of these communities. They were sometimes known as historical black communities, but in order to distinguish them from the other famous historical black historical communities, we have chosen the name of Black Freedom Colonies. The word freedom was very special to African Americans because once they were freed in 1865, they had nothing to grasp on. So to own their own property unequivocally was the first emblem that they were actually free. And so having land, church, communities, gave them that sense that they were indeed free and no one had to tell them otherwise. Each freedom colony consisted of 3 essential elements. They were considered the vanguard, the impetus of each community. The community had consisted of a church, a school, and a cemetery. And these were the foundation for the community's foundings. 11 settlements were identified throughout these areas. And these settlements consisted mainly of African Americans who were trained initially by the Federal Bureau by Abraham Lincoln. And before there were any other books to be talked about, these new settlements had to start out on their own without any supervision, without any guidance, other than the Federal Bureau that was started by Abraham Lincoln. A little bit about myself. I am from Northern Virginia. I was there raised in Washington, D.C. area, and I worked for CIA, a Central Intelligence Agency, the Defense Intelligence Agency, and the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency. These were federal agencies that were clandestine, and they gave me the background for writing intelligence reports. And so, based on my writing of intelligence, I was able to gain a lot of information about historical aspects. Many of the things that I write about come from knowing the background and the research dealing with various topics. And this was very helpful in helping me to write about the historical aspects of the African American. I have also other interests such as music. I also do artwork as well as painting. And I use these as pursuits to give me a sideline to other duties that I am responsible for. One of the duties that I did do combined music and mathematics into a single entity. And I created this business, and my wife and I, we founded it for 5 years in Woodway, Texas, and we decided that it was a very good business until the COVID hit, and then it decided to upturn what we had done, and so we decided to retire from that, and I went into private teaching and education. Now back to our original story. In 1865, in June, this was the eve of the great emancipation of African Americans. And most of the African Americans were just content with what they had earned in life. And they knew that it was a matter of time that things would either dissolve or improve. And so they waited their lot. But on the 19th of June, 1865, the word came out, even though it was about 2 years after Abraham Lincoln signed the Emancipation Proclamation, that they were free. Then that turned the whole scale and helped them to understand that a brighter future was ahead. Many of the slaves pondered whether the institution was to be permanent, and they decided that after time that it was not, and that they did have access to freedom. Next is a founder of McLennan County, which is known as the keepsake of the county, McNeil McLennan Sr. And he's born in around 1880s until 1995. And he not only was the founder of the white settlements, but he was the founder of the black settlements, because he introduced 6 slaves, and those 6 slaves became very popular in names as well as descendants of McLennan County. The next is the founder of the Willow Grove community. This was the largest community in Waco. It was near the location that Neil McLennan County has settled, and many of the relatives and descendants of McLennan County and Neil McLennan County Sr. Were from this community. Now you notice that the complexion of these people in Willow Grove community were very light, and that's because the founder, Buck McLennan, was a white man, and he owned slaves in Mississippi, and his father, Buck McLennan, led them to Texas, to Willow Grove, and there freedom was declared, and he allowed them to secure their own land, and gave them money, and gave them the resources in order to begin again to earn their own living. And Buck was very well respected. He was a preacher, and he was an entrepreneur. He did lumber, and he also did vegetables and horses and herds and so forth. He's a very versatile individual. And this was his brother-in-law, Albert A.W. Crawford, which was given credit for co-founding the county for the community. And his wife, Harriet Manning, also helped to form the churches, the schools, as well as the cemetery. This is a collage of the entire community. It shows the church, the school, and the cemetery. One of the few monuments that were built out of our 11 historical settlements was the concrete marker built by Buck Manning. On this monument, Buck listed Manning, Crawford, McLennan Jr., as well as some other Grove communities. Next is the Goshen community. Goshen community is 14 miles northwest of Waco. And here, 20 slaves gathered together in an oak grove. And there they decided to worship the Lord as best they could. So they built a brush arbor. Brush arbor is nothing more than temporary housing for a church or worship. And there they worshiped God for several years until they finally found a building in which to make a permanent residence for their church. And in January 1900, an African-American couple, Carissa Smith, decided she wanted to build a school for the African-American community. So she started a school there in 1900. That school lasted in 1953 and was well known. My parents went there, my wife's parents went there, and they were very well established as far as education-wise. This is Carissa Smith's tombstone, which was buried next to her grave in Pleasant Grove Missionary Baptist Church Cemetery. And in this cemetery, it was a location for many of the African Americans who lived in that community. This is just a brochure of the homecoming anniversary, celebrating the 150th anniversary. Correctly now, this is now the 153rd anniversary of that church. Next is the Harrison Switch community. Harrison Switch community is 8 miles southeast of Waco. And it was built by Major General James Harrison, who was a Confederate general. And he was considered one of the last officers of the Confederate Army in Texas. And his main responsibility was the loyalty of his slaves. He gave them close to 20 to 30 acres of land, gave them houses, gave them locations for businesses, and along a railroad spur, which he referred to as Harrison Switch. And all of the blacks in that community referred to that community as Harrison Switch, even though the name for most of the white community was Harrisonville or Hallsburg. But Harrison Switch remained a popular name for African Americans. This slide shows one of Prince Hall lodges. And Prince Hall lodges was a typical African American lodge. It's a fraternity, secret organization that was used by African Americans in order to build their churches. The first church built by General Harrison in Harrison Switch was called Pilgrim Rest Baptist Church. Harrison Switch was known to have 3 black African American churches, 3 schools, as well as 3 cemeteries. One of the popular community citizens of Harrison Switch was named Dr. T.C. Webster. Dr. T.C. Webster was considered a guru, Geeroio. And Guru was an inspirational storyteller of the West African nation, and he relocated to the United States. And there, he continued his trade of memory work. And doing the memory work entailed knowing and recognizing the background of the community and being able to tell them at a moment's notice what has transpired in the past. And so T.C. Webster was one of those Gurus who knew this community. He was raised in Harrison Switch, and he still lives there, has a farm there, and along with other businesses that are shown on the slide. A very active individual, but just a delightful gentleman to talk to. Along Harrison Switch was Dr. Jeffrey Allen. She was a Baylor professor, but she's also known as the leader of the Home Demonstration Agency. This was a government agency that was designed to help African Americans and poor white people to acclimate themselves to the farming routine. They were taught how to cure ham, how to grow vegetables, how to plant mid-seasonal crops, and a lot of activities that were helpful for their health and well-being. Next is the Elmont community. It's 10 miles northeast of Waco, and in this community was founded by J.B. Bush and Agnes Bush. Both of these slaves were born in Oklahoma, and their owner asked, once they were freed, allowed them to take their assets and gave them money and gave them property rights to land that whenever they relocated to, and they moved to Elmont, Texas. And it took 3 years in moving from Oklahoma City to Elmont, but they arrived there and they took under the attributes of their owner, J.B. Bush, and did many of the things that he asked them to do. One thing he asked them to do is that they memorize 3 standard rules, and those 3 standard rules were to never marry until you marry someone who owned property, and to make sure that the property owner had land, and also to ensure that the property owner married into someone who's of the family. This is the church in which they first built, called Bush Columbia Presbyterian Church, 1884, and it was of America, and it's called CPIA, and there's only 3 of them built in Texas. One was in Waco, one was at Elmont, the other was in Harrison Switch. Alongside these churches were New Zion Baptist Church, and New Hope Baptist Church. And here are some pictures of New Hope and New Zion. Now, New Zion has been totally demolished, and a new version of it was built 1 month ago, and it's standing. Next, we have Chalk Bluff Community Church. It's 7 miles north of Waco, 4 miles west of Elmont, and this community was for 12 years in utterly darkness because they didn't have a church. And so they relocated to Bosqueville when the Brazos River was dry, and they would worship there at Bosqueville. And Bosqueville took them under their wings and molded them into a Baptist church. This was the original church that's built in 1919. And it's an odd-looking structure in that it was octagonally shaped or maybe a multifaceted shape building, and it lasted for hundreds of years, and it raised a lot of good people, including me and my parents, and this was one of the worship centers that we used. In the bottom photograph, you see that the tallest girl in that picture is another Jiru who happens to be my sister. The principal of the school at this Chalk Bluff was a well-known, respected lady named Miss Odessa Maya Wyatt. Miss Wyatt was a legend in her own time. She played piano, she sung, directed choir, taught school, was the principal for 14 years at Chalk Bluff, and was well regarded and well known by African Americans in her community. The other lady who was well respected is a Jiru, who happens to be my cousin, Agnes Harris Easley, and she is still living today. She's 96 years old and still talks a lot. You ask her any question that you like about her old church, and she'll just raffle it off without any doubt. And she's very credible and very believable. And she considers the book that I wrote her book. and for a large reason, she deserves a lot of credit for it because of her memory work. The last one I have is Downsville Rosenthal community. It's 8 miles southeast of Waco, and the largest plantation in this area was owned by a person named William Wood Downs, and he was a very generous owner, and he not only gave his ex-slaves money for land, but he also gave them opportunity to form a town, and that town was called Downsville. In this Downsville, he had many communities, businesses, and barbershops and so forth, and churches and communities and cemeteries, and it was a really flourishing community. And there was 3 Baptist churches in this community: the Mount Zion Missionary Baptist Church, the Mount Olive Missionary Baptist Church, and the Rosenthal Downsville Church. Here's a Pleasant Grove historical marker, which marks one of the churches in Downsville. Here are three of the cornerstones of one of the churches, also in Downsville, Texas. And the Pleasant Grove Baptist Church, again, showing the cemetery. And last but not least, the Mount Olive Missionary Baptist Church. The last church I'm going to talk about is the New Zion Missionary Baptist Church, which also was in Downsville. Unfortunately, a fire destroyed it, unknown cause, and it was vacated for about 3 years until they decided to move the location from the Downsville area to the East Waco area. And there they started again a church, and they called it the New Zion Missionary Baptist Church. And not East Waco, but in North Waco. And in this North Waco church, they used a Hispanic church that had been abandoned and purchased it and turned it into a missionary Baptist church. I have presented a few of the settlements, which are called Freedom Colonies, for your view. And in one of those, it is the Waco Second Baptist Missionary Baptist Church in East Waco, Texas. This facility was first originally in West Waco, in South Waco, excuse me. And in South Waco, it was there for about 20 years. And then they decided they would move and relocate to East Waco. And one of the reasons they decided to move is because Baylor University was purchasing much of the land that was used for development in their campus. In order to enlarge their campuses, they purchased many of the African American communities, giving them a good value for the land and giving them a good opportunity to repossess other areas of the city. And so Second Baptist moved to East Waco, and there they relocated and rebuilt a beautiful facility based on their own plans. They also had the opportunity to transfer Texas historical marker, which they had received prior to being moved from Waco, South Waco, to East Waco. Here is the West Waco communities in East Waco. You have the east of the Brazos and east of the Highway 35. And the first one was the St. Luke AME Church, which was one of the first African American Episcopal churches in the area, and it was established in East Waco. Second one was the East Waco Cumberland Presbyterian Church. Now, East Waco Cumberland Presbyterian Church is sort of unique to Waco in that only 3 of them were identified in Waco, and all 3 were African Americans. This is an unusual denomination in that they believed in Jesus Christ, but they also practiced many of the Baptist doctrines, and they participated very easily with African American Baptists. Then you had the Pleasant Grove Missionary Baptist Church in 1872, which was one of 2 churches that had the similar names. The other one was Pleasant Grove Missionary Baptist Church and Golson. Each of them, consisted of founding in 1872 and only 4 months apart. Other cities in East Waco was the St. Luke African Methodist Episcopal Church. And this particular church was well known for its large size and its great assimilation of African Americans into its communities. It had a vibrant pastor, an educator, and he was known as Reverend Archie Lee Hutton. And Archie Lee Hutton was the pastor of St. Luke AME Church in Waco for some time. There were 3 other smaller cemeteries associated with East Waco, and each of these cemeteries served different churches, but they all treated them as owners of the cemetery. There's Greenwood Cemetery and 2 other cemeteries. All of the communities had cemeteries associated with them. One of the most famous churches in East Waco was called Tolliver's Chapel Church. Tolliver's Chapel Church was known for its musical vendors, and those musical opportunities gave a lot of black musicians an opportunity to start into the professional gospel business or professional music business. And this church was led by Dr. Jimmy Hunter. Dr. Jimmy Hunter was the pastor of this church for several years, over 27 years. And he led the music department and was absolutely outstanding when it came to ministering the music of gospel. He worked with Baylor exclusively in handling its conservatory on African American historical venues, such as recording records and videos. This is the Colonial Presbyterian Church that I mentioned earlier. It had 2 out of 3 in McLennan County, and this was the largest of the 3. The other 2 were in, not Elmont Cemetery, but near Elmont Cemetery, near the Elmont Settlement, as well as one near Goshen, which is in Harris Switch. Then you have the St. Luke African American Methodist Episcopal Church in 1886, and this particular church started as a storefront on Elm Street and was led by the Reverend Charlie Gibson. After several years, it also moved from this local 12 by 12 position on Elm Street into a permanent facility. And this is a cemetery, one of the cemeteries associated with the church. Each church has its own cemetery or uses cemeteries used by other churches. So it still fits in with the compliance that they have to have a church, school, and cemetery. Now, one thing that I've left out are the schools. The schools are mostly defunct now because of segregation. But essentially, when 1865 came around, all of these communities opened their own schools in order to train African Americans in how to read or write. And one of the results of the studies of this book was to compare how well African American literacy had changed from 1865 to 1895, within 30 years after having their own education system. The students were tested and tried and compared with white readers of the same age, and they have discovered that the literacy was very close. White people had about 95% reading and writing capability in 1900, and black people had 93% reading and writing capability in 1900. And I think that covers everything that I have assembled in today's slides.